who's incredibly curious about human beings and about how different things impact us and how they affect our relationships and our communication. And as a psychologist who is very much concerned about certain elements of technology and of how we consume it and of how we use it. And this is a beautiful illustration of kind of part of the reason for my concern. So in case you haven't come across this image yet, this is what happens in an internet minute in this year. The people who put this together have been doing it for a few years, so it's very interesting to look at the kind of comparison between the different years and how things have changed. But in neuroscience, there's this saying that goes, where attention goes, energy flows. And so I think this illustration shows really well where most of our energy is directed, or where a lot of it is directed in any case, especially during a very brief 60-second period. So you can see the number of logins into Facebook, the number of text messages being sent, YouTube videos being watched. There's a whole lot of stuff that is going on online at this point. In order to use technology in a much more mindful way, which I think is part of developing digital independence, it is really important to not just look at this and panic and go, oh my God, look at this. This is horrible. We're spending all of our time online. We know that a lot of this time spent is spent well and is spent in positive, nurturing ways. And so I wanted to share this image with you, and kind of as I'm talking about it, I really encourage you to think in terms of where you kind of map out, where your own personal experience maps out when it comes to the different forms of technology that you use. There are only 4 that these researchers looked at. So this study was done a little over 2 years ago in the UK, looking at the population of 14 to 24-year-olds. And you know, it's pretty clear here to see that there are some very negative impacts of excessive tech use, social media in particular. And then there's some more positive ones. So you can see obviously that social media use, at least, is very detrimental for our sleep. It doesn't help us out much with our fear of missing out, aka FOMO. Bullying and body image tend to be really, really negatively or have a very negative impact as well. If you look into the blue zone, we see a lot of positive things. So a lot of young people really like it for the purpose of expressing themselves, of expressing who they are, their self-identity. It looks like Facebook in particular, for that age group at least, was very helpful in terms of finding emotional support, right? So it's very important to have that kind of nuanced approach to our digital experiences and to really understand where these, let's call them red zones and blue zones are, so that we can try and stay in those blue zones as much as we can, and kind of try and help other people stay there as well. Now, there are a few reasons why it's very difficult to do that. And this is where these questions around obligation and around being very attached to our tech and kind of excessive tech use come in. And there are a couple of different ones. I tend to kind of categorize them into 2 categories. One is very tech focused. The other one is very brain focused. So I want to have a look at the tech-focused one. Now, if I wanted to be very dramatic, I would call this the 4 horsemen of tech, but I'm not going to be that dramatic. So I'm just going to say that these are 4 kind of aspects or areas of tech design and consumption that I find to be particularly problematic. And I try to raise awareness on these in my work as much as I possibly can, because I think each and every one of us needs to be very aware of what they are. So I'm going to talk you through them just very briefly, especially in case you haven't really come across these before. So the first one for me is personal data, right? And this concept or misconception really that there is such a thing as a free app, right? So Google Maps is something we get to use free. Oh, wow, how exciting, right? So we love it, we all use it. Or whatever else the app happens to be. Facebook is also a free app. There's no such thing as a free app. There's absolutely no such thing as a free digital or tech-based service, because the currency in this case isn't money, it's your personal data. And since about, I believe it was either late 2018 or 2019, personal data became the most valued currency in the world, or it became really the most valuable item of exchange, even more valuable than oil, right? So anytime we step into a free app and we use it, we are paying for it. It's just that we're paying with our personal data. The second one is this idea of, and again, I don't know if you guys would have heard of this, but it's called move fast and break things. And this really applies to any form of technology. Just to to the ways in which technology is built. And these words were famously uttered by Mark Zuckerberg, who's the CEO of Facebook. And he was saying, if you're not breaking things as you're making tech, you're not moving fast enough. You're not doing a good job. So that is your marker in terms of how successful you are with creating new forms of technology. And of course, this goes exactly against a more kind of slow moving, more mindful, more intentional and purposeful use of technology. The third one is persuasive design, and that's, I think, one of the most important ones, especially when it comes to things like digital marketing and when it comes to the way in which we use our social media apps and accounts. And that's this idea of persuasive design, and there are many different elements of it. One of my, favorite, I have a love-hate relationship to it, but is the infinite scroll. And you all would have experienced what that is. It's the fact that if I were to ask you, tell me where Instagram ends, or tell me where Facebook ends, or really Twitter, any other form of social media, there isn't really an end, and that's due to the infinite scroll. And there are many other elements of that. It's a whole field of study, really, and unfortunately, I have to say, a lot of the time, psychologists are involved in helping designers create persuasive design. The final one is connected to the first one, this idea of personal data, and that's the fact that we're really all living in the attention economy, right? So it's this cost per view, again, if you're talking about digital marketing. And this doesn't only apply to you in case you are a business or you're a marketer and you're trying to get as many eyeballs as you can. We're really all involved in it. Anybody who has a social media account, who posts a picture, if you post a TikTok video, you want some attention on it, right? You're not posting it because you're going, I'll get 0 likes. That's cool. That's exactly what I'm after in this moment. No, you want the likes, you want the shares, you want that engagement, right? That interaction. And so we're all kind of in the midst of it, and it has a pretty serious impact on our brain. And our brain, because of some of the ways in which it's wired, falls pretty hard for some of these tech maneuvers. And so these are some of the examples of how our brain kind of gets lost in all of these methods of persuasive design and just all of these different design elements of today's technology. So we know that we tend to touch our smartphones at least 2,600 times every day. Now, this is relatively old data. This is from about a year ago, so it'd be interesting to see what that number is now. A lot of research in cognitive science has shown that our smartphones tend to drain our cognitive ability, even if we set them on silent, if we switch them off, if we put them away somewhere in our bag. And a lot of this research was done with college students, where they performed, we were talking about math at the beginning of this, they performed much worse on some of the math questions that they were given when that phone was just kind of within reach, even when it was switched off, as opposed to when they just left it somewhere completely outside of the room, or just left it at home when it wasn't present, right? So even when it's not really there, we know that it's affecting us. And then this one is really incredible. So up to about 75% of people tend to use their smartphone while they're on the toilet. So don't feel bad if you do as well. Plenty of people do that. And it looks like a third say that the reason for that is because they want to avoid boredom. So that's an interesting thing to think about next time that we're on the toilet without, hopefully, our smartphones with us, right? And so, like I said, there are two categories here, really, which I see as being kind of the biggest challengers to our ability to be digitally independent and be a little bit more mindful in terms of how we use our technology. And one is the way our technology is designed. It is designed to be incredibly accessible, to have that seamless integration, and to have that lack of friction, which again is something that designers talk about a lot. Steve Jobs felt very strongly about that as they were designing a lot of the Apple products, like the smartphone, the iPod as well. The idea was that it fits into your hand seamlessly. It's very smooth, it's very frictionless, very unobtrusive, and it's very easy for you to just reach out and pick it up. On the other hand, our brain is wired in a lot of ways that make it very easy for us to kind of overuse our technology. And there are quite a few different reasons. The main one that I wanted to kind of point out to you or bring to your attention is this need that we have to belong and to be accepted. And I think that need, which exists on a very, very fundamental level, and our survival really just as human beings depends on it. I think that reason alone explains a lot about why we use social media, in particular in the way that we do. And so, like I said, this is something that our brain is simply wired to do. Many hundreds, thousands of years ago, this was the drive that pushed us towards survival. Unlike a lot of other species, human beings can't really survive by themselves, kind of out in the wilderness of either today's world or, again, if we're talking about ancient humans. And so we feel that need to kind of band together, to stick together, to stay in touch, to communicate, to connect. And of course, our technology today and our social media makes that, again, incredibly easy to do. It's seamless to do. It's so easily accessible. And so that explains part of the reason for why we are as attached as we are, and why we do tend to be so digitally dependent. So there are a few ideas that I want to share with you and a few kind of tips that I want to share with you in terms of how we can build up that independence a little bit more. I've been using the word mindfulness a lot. I don't mean that in that traditional kind of meditating sense of the Far Eastern tradition of Buddhism. It's really about paying attention and being focused. And so in its kind of simplest forms, I drew up this very simple graph of attention and meaningfulness. And where we want to try and stay is where that X is. X marks the spot in this case for sure, which is to really try and engage with our tech with a lot of attention and a lot of meaningfulness, and to reconsider our behavior if we're not really finding a lot of meaning in what we're doing, and we're not really finding ourselves caring enough to really pay attention. We'll often find ourselves being very attentive of things that are not particularly meaningful. You definitely can't convince me that 10 episodes into a particular show, it still holds a lot of meaning for you. I have binged on occasion myself, and I know that your brain just kind of tends to get fried towards the end of it. Kind of nothing makes sense anymore. But the state that I'm kind of even more worried about, that worries me even more, is that Y that's on the bottom left. And it's when we have a very low amount of attention, very low amount of meaning in that tech experience as well. And so this, again, is where that infinite scroll tends to happen, and 5 or 10 minutes in, you're not really even sure why you're there anymore. So really thinking about it in terms of, am I really interested in this and paying attention to it? And does this hold a lot of meaning for me? And if the answer is no to both of those, then we need to reconsider kind of why we're doing it. I wanted to mention social media in particular because, again, this is such a huge part of all of our lives. And these are some of the questions that I always share with people and that I suggest they think about really before they use social media. And again, I showed you that graph earlier on that gives a relatively good sense of what that the 14 to 24 age group finds particularly helpful and positive and kind of nurturing in social media, and what is kind of the flip side of that. So one of the important questions is really, what do we expect from social media even? And does it actually deliver on that? Do we actually get that back? So you saw in that graph, if you recall, that self-expression, for example, was really highly ranked for a lot of people who were asked in that study. So if my expectation with, say, Instagram is that I'll get to express my my artistic talent, and I do that, that's wonderful. I'm going to keep using it. But if I at some point discover that actually I'm starting to feel worse and worse about myself for some reason as I'm using this platform, then I'm going to reconsider that. And then the question that I've been bringing up the whole time, really, how can we use social media more mindfully and more intentionally, so that, again, we know why we're using it and we kind of define a clear purpose for it in our lives. There was a really wonderful, very brief, very simple study that was done by a women's charity called The Female Lead, where they asked a group of teenage girls to not change anything else about how they were using Instagram, except to follow a few more women who are in the fields that they're very interested in. So whether that was science, whether that was space travel, or it was athletics or fashion, whatever it may have been, but to find a few women who are really influential, successful in what they do, and who are quite well known in their fields, to follow them for about a week or two and see how they feel. And a lot of these girls reported back that they had no idea that they could use their Instagram in that kind of a way. They thought it was to look at kitten pictures and their friends' holiday photos and friends sharing what makeup they just bought, but that really transformed their experience of social media. So when it comes to social media, I think that's one of the most important questions that we need to ask to really understand what we're using it for and why. And then finally, as someone who's very interested in emotional wellness, emotional intelligence, I think one of the most important questions that we need to ask is, how does our tech actually make us feel? How do we feel before we step to it, before we pick it up and use it? While we're using it, how do we feel? And then in the aftermath, how does it leave us feeling as well? So that we can then adjust the ways in which we're using it, whether we're just going to reduce the time spent, whether we're going to change the types of people who we follow, whether we're going to decide that, do you know what, I'd prefer to communicate with my friends through texts as opposed to Instagram, you know, whatever it happens to be, but really to increase that level of kind of self-awareness and emotional intelligence as well as we approach our technology use. And so now we're just about ready to go into our breakout rooms. I'm really excited about doing those activities. But I know that both Faith and Molly have a couple of questions that they wanted to ask me. So I want to give them the opportunity to do that, and I can perhaps expand a little bit on some of the things that I've mentioned already.
Okay, I can go first if that's okay.
Sure, Faith. Yeah, of course.
So I think listening to you, it would be easy to say that we almost feel obligated to social media,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's like obligated to be on it or obligated to post or whatever it may be. Where do
Mm-hmm.
you think that like stems from? Like, where do you think it started from?
Yeah, yeah. I think part of it is definitely just that kind of simple biological need to connect. We do it in a different way now than we used to do it before. It's a combination of that and the fact that it's just right there in our pocket. It's so incredibly easy to kind of to reach out. Another aspect of it is this area of tech design, or this kind of component within tech design called metrics. Again, metrics are not just something that marketers use to see, okay, how many people clicked on this product, you know, how many engaged with it, how many viewed the video. I think we all use it on an individual level, right? So we keep an eye out for how many likes did we have and how many views did we have and how often did we share that. And of course, we often tend to associate our self-worth with that and our popularity. And again, I have a huge amount of compassion for that because we are social creatures. We want to be liked, we want to belong, we want to feel seen, we want to feel heard. Again, they're kind of pathways within our brain for all of these different systems that make sure that we get seen and we feel like we belong, and you know, we find our tribe and we get as many likes as we possibly can. But again, if we go back to the question of how does that make you feel, if you do feel positive as a result of that interaction, then that's wonderful, because again, you got to express your talents or your likes or your experiences, your thoughts, whatever it is. But once you sense that this actually doesn't feel so good anymore, I'm not starting to enjoy this, that's the point at which I think we need to reconsider what we're doing. I think another aspect to that, and interestingly enough, I had an example just this morning of feeling very obligated. And I didn't realize it in the moment, again, like we often don't, but I did afterwards, and I thought, okay, I'll have to share it with them. Somebody who I know had posted a picture of their pet who had gotten hurt and had to get surgery, which is, of course, incredibly sad. And this is someone who I know professionally, someone who I wouldn't necessarily say is a friend, but we're very friendly, and I know this person, and I do care about them, and I do also care about their pet, who I've only met virtually so far, but a very, very sweet creature. And so as I was looking at that post and I was looking at these comments, I suddenly felt obligated to say something, or to like it, to leave a comment. And I thought, this doesn't feel very true to me. I would much rather have a conversation with this person and say, hey, what happened? How are you doing? Or send them a text, or do something else like that, instead of go in and give it that like. But since they hadn't contacted me directly, I did in the end give that like and leave a message and so on. But what that also got me thinking about is the fact that the ways in which we communicate nowadays are kind of like, I think a real life equivalent of that would have been her walking around the neighborhood and yelling out that her dog needed surgery, right? The message isn't directed towards any one particular person. It's just, I've posted it here on my platform. And so what are the expectations in terms of who's going to engage with that, right? Who's going to answer? I think that's the part for me where I get frustrated when I'm on social media, is I feel this obligation, even though that person didn't actually reach out to me specifically. They didn't go, Teodora, you will not believe what just happened to me this morning with my pet, and this is what's going on. That's a very different interaction, as opposed to, here's this information, I'm just yelling it out and showing it to everybody. And now the expectation is what? That everyone's going to respond. So I think the ways in which we kind of reach out to each other have also become very generalized. And I think it would be, I at least feel a personal need to reinstate a little bit more of that direct communication, of reaching out to people more directly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Faith.
Hi.
There's Molly. Hi, Molly.
Hi. My question was seeing this graph as you were speaking today about what happens in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Puts into perspective how dependent some people are on just their devices in general. It doesn't have to be a phone. So my question was, what would be the most common excuse that you hear when talking with people about why they feel that they can't be dependent from their phones or away from their phones?
Right. A lot of the times when I'll ask people, they'll actually say they don't know. They're not too sure. I think they also don't get asked that question. So by now people know that I focus on digital wellness, and they kind of they know when I'm around, they're likely to get a question like that. But I have done that with people a number of times, and when you ask that question, they'll kind of start talking out loud and thinking about it, and say, well, someone might text me, or I don't know, someone might share some news with me or something like that, and then I'll go, well, is that something that needs to be addressed like in the moment, as soon as it happens? And they'll go, well, no, like probably not. So I'm like, okay, so then why, where this necessity, where does it come from to be there? And they're like, I don't know. It's just, and that's what that means, is it's become a habit. And this comes down to, again, the way our brain is built. Our brain uses up, given how small it is, relatively speaking, to the rest of our body, it uses a huge amount of energy. It uses about 20% of all of the energy that we put into our body. So it takes a lot of energy for the brain to do anything. And what it really likes to do is save energy. So if it can automate something, if something can go on autopilot and just become a habit, like every time I want to write, I pick up a pen. Every time I write, it's not something I have to think about consciously, because that's when it costs me energy. If I can just automate it, that makes it super simple. And again, because of the way in which our tech is designed, you don't really have to think about it anymore. It's just there, and it kind of does the job for you. I often like to say that we're kind of outsourcing our frontal brain. Our frontal brain is kind of the more rational decision-making part of the brain. So a lot of times people don't know why the device is there. The second and third, well, maybe they share a second place. The two kind of biggest reasons will be work. A lot of the time, if there are deadlines and things, if the boss suddenly comes up with something and needs to and needs to share that information, a lot of people work from their phones, so that will be another one. And then the other group that's very familiar to all of you is parents. And so parents a lot of the times will say, but I need to be able to check where they are, and maybe something will happen and they'll send me a text and I won't know, I won't be there. What will I do? And then they'll start catastrophizing. So I would say number one reason is people don't know what the reason is, because it's just become a kind of mindless habit. And I think the second and third are definitely work on the one hand, and then the parenting on the other.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. Thank you. And Marie, I think I can explain what our breakout groups are going to be about, and then we can do that, right?
Go for it.
All right. So the idea for this really, from me, was to get you guys just to think in a futuristic kind of a way. I think that's one of the most important aspects of becoming more aware of tech developments, and really thinking in terms of what we do and don't give our consent to in terms of the kind of tech that not just that we use as individuals, but that we kind of want to see as part of our society. So we're going to pretend that we're very powerful today and that we can make decisions about whether certain types of tech are actually going to be used in society, see the light of day or not. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break us up into 4 rooms, and I would like each room to take one type of tech that I've outlined here. And what I would like you to do is think about and discuss its pros, so why you think this form of tech is a good idea, why it should be there. What are the cons? Why do you think that this can either be detrimental, damaging, potentially dangerous, just unhelpful? And then I would like you guys to vote at the end. Do you think this tech should actually be implemented in the real world, or should we kind of get rid of it and shelf it? So the 4 types that we are going to be discussing, one is neuromarketing, and I've given you just very brief descriptions there so that you kind of know what we're talking about in case you haven't heard of these before. Smart diapers, yes, it's a real thing. That is the other one, only one of the many smart items for parents to choose from nowadays. We have polite AI. It's going to make sure that you're polite in your emails. And then finally, we have voice-activated devices with EQ. EQ stands for emotional intelligence, right? So it's going to be devices that are going to respond in certain ways to your emotional cues, right? So they're going to be able to read your emotions and then to respond to those. Okay, so I think, Marie, if anybody has any questions though, they can feel free to ask. Again, Marie, you can see the chat and all of that, right?
I can, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And will you, I think I'm creating the breakout rooms now, but I think
Sure.
really it would be helpful, Teodora, if you could would you copy and paste each of the 4?
Oh, that is a very good question.
So someone can, so
Yeah.
it'll be the 4 folks that I designated sort of as the group leads before. So if you know that you are a group lead,
let me see. I think I may need to stop sharing my screen for a second to do that.
Fine.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, hang on. Sorry, guys. Okay, give me 1 second. Why is this happening? Ah, here we go. Okay. Just give me 1 second.
You're fine. So we have 4 groups. Each group is going to choose one. So let's do, I guess, maybe when you're copying and pasting them in, could you say like room 1 and then one of them?
Sure.
Just so we know. And Carol, I'm going to put you in with room 1. Teo, you're room 2. Molly's room 3. And Faith is room 4. The little discussion leads, but I'm sure that it will be a very equal conversation once we get in there.
Yes. Okay, so I've got neuromarketing here.
Perfect.
Sorry, like I said, I'm not a digital native.
Right.
I mean, I sort of am, but not really.
The breakout rooms function is like a little bit clunky just because you can never share, like when the screen disappears once.
I see.
But
okay.
This will be fine. So Carol, that one's your group.
Okay, then we've got 2.
Yours,
is mine number 2?
This is number 2, yeah.
Oh, good, exciting. All right.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Oh yes, smart diapers, here we go. Okay, we got polite AI, and then
polite AI is Molly. So if I'm calling you out, just copy and paste that so you have it to share if you want to get in there.
And then we've got room 4, voice activated devices with emotional intelligence. Okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Room 4. Smart.
And then remind me how much time do we want to spend before we come back?
Let me see where we're at. 40. Let's give it about 5 to 10 minutes, okay, maybe 5 minutes, just so we have. Oh yeah, and I messed up the writing on my page. This is So much fun, guys.
Well,
Hang on.
there's always a metaphor in there when you're talking about digital wellness and you're trying to use technology.
Always.
So room 4, that's
Always.
Faith. So I'll just cast a message at 5 minutes so that everyone knows they have like a couple minutes left and they can wrap it up, and then I'll close the rooms and everyone will be called back to the main session.
Okay, sure. I'm gonna share this one again just in case.
Yeah, and if
the fluke happens and everyone can see it.
Probably what would have been easier that I could have just said is that everyone just take a picture of the screen on your phone,
right,
so that you can look at it. But
yes,
you know,
well, no, for next time, it's fine.
Could you repeat the guidelines one more time?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So have a look at each form of tech, whether it's the neuromarketing, smart diapers, polite AI, or the emotionally intelligent devices, and just have a small discussion amongst yourselves about what you think the benefits of these are, like why you think these are helpful or useful, or why we should have them, you know, in the world, why you think they're not such a great idea, what are the ways in which they may be problematic, whether it's for ethical reasons, privacy, data protection, psychologically they may have a negative impact on us, you know, they could, you know, whatever the problems are that they could cause, and then at the end vote whether you feel like, okay, we should still implement these forms of tech, we should let them see the light of day, or no, you know, I would stop the funding on this immediately if I could. So that's the basic idea.
Thank you.
Sure, Carol.
Perfect. So I am going to open the rooms now.
Sure.
And for those of you who are in charge, you can just recopy and paste your blurb into the chat once you're in the room, because it's going to repopulate a new chat and then everyone will have it in front of them.
Sure.
Cool.
All right. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. I think that's fine. All right. See you guys.
Happy chatting.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful, Rob. Hi, Marie. Hi. 5 humans and 2 dogs. Love it. All right. So I know I've been aware of smart diapers for a while. Again, given my work and my interest in parenting in the age of technology, without knowing too much, just based on what I've shared.
Okay, so I read. Oh, Marie's joining us. Hi.
Hello. Just popping in and out.
Okay, is this
what topic do you guys have again?
the emotional intelligence devices?
Yes, interesting.
Yeah.
Don't let me interrupt.
Well, what's it supposed to? We're trying to figure out what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
I think it's for email. I think it's to like regulate the tone of your email, right? Or is that the different one?
I think that's the third one.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. This one is like, so I read the description and it was like, say you were like shopping online, like Amazon for pants, or that was the example.
Yeah.
And like they're not for sale or something or whatever, and then like it would recognize that you were frustrated and it would send you like a discount code to like make you happier. So
very weird.
Super weird.
Well, I'll take the discount, but I don't necessarily want something in my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
I think there's enough of that.
Yeah.
big time.
Pupilometry, so whether or not the pupils are engaged, biometrics, which is like the skin, whether or not your heart rate, your respiration level, how sweaty you are, and
allow the tone or intonation of what you're trying to convey be authentic. It's pretend because it's mimicking, and I think sometimes, whether it's texting or social media, we say what people want, not necessarily what we want to say. We're trying to just say what we think people
Hello, everyone.
First group back.
First group back. I love it.
Yeah.
What's the? I guess I was gonna say what's the verdict. I'll wait. No spoilers.
Okay. All right. It was really interesting, though.
I know it is.
We were.
Oh, cool. Okay. I think this is everyone now. Yeah. Excellent.
Do we have everyone back?
Everyone's back.
Wonderful. Amazing. So we were maybe perhaps since we don't have too much time, we can just have our leaders let us know kind of what the vote was. We were the Smart Diapers group, and it just so happened that everyone agreed with me, so we definitely voted a nay for Smart Diapers, at least in this form. In this form, due to some data collection, data privacy, and safety.
Oh.
So that was us. Yeah. What about the neuromarketing group?
So the neuromarketing group, we kind of all didn't really know like exactly like what it meant. So Kevin actually looked up research about it, and we got more information, and we all voted nay because of the procedures. Like you would have to get an MRI.
Yeah.
A lot of like medical things that are being used to just track how people shop. And so we were more like on the nay, but like maybe to get more information.
Sure.
Redundant advertisements on our phones. Like,
right.
For example, I gave this last example, but like, let's say you're shopping online and you buy a face mask, and then after that, all your ads on your phone are about face masks. So that's like annoying to see that over and over again. So it could help with better marketing, but it also is very creepy how intense that they acquire information is. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Carol. Yeah, thank you guys. And thank you for doing more research on it to find out a little bit more about it. For me, the main concern with neuromarketing is the fact that the idea is you don't know what you want, or you don't actually know what you want. Now, here's a way in which we can learn what you actually want. And so we're going to dig in and dig in and dig in and dig in, and then we'll find what it actually is. And so we're going to bypass your consciousness, and we're going to go right into the subconscious. And a very successful use of neuromarketing was done by Cheetos a couple of years ago, where they wanted to know whether their customers really do hate having all that orangey fluff on their fingers, because people would say, I hate it, can you please make these differently? And they applied some of these neuromarketing approaches, and what they actually found was that actually people liked it. It was almost like a badge of honor to be all dirty with that orange stuff on your fingers. So they created a whole marketing campaign around that. And you guys may remember the one where the UV light went on, and then they could see that everyone had orange on their fingers, including the cat had it on its little paws. That was a result of neuromarketing. So thank you to the neuromarketing group. How about the polite AI that will make your emails more polite? What was the vote there?
So my group kind of came to the yay side of it. Because we think it can help some people, but the flip side of it is that we were kind of concerned about the authenticity of emails and your own personality coming through during those emails. But the reason why I think we decided with yay was because we wouldn't have to use it, and no one really has to use it if they don't want to.
Sure.
But it presents the option for people who may have more trouble just in general, just speaking people on the fly. So we thought, people can help them there, but we also have the option to use it too.
Sure. Okay, I appreciate that. I think that's an important point in terms of digital independence and having that freedom of consent. So you have the option to use that or to not use it. And I appreciate your point around authenticity. I think that's an important one as well. For me, the issue there was that authenticity, but also the fact that I don't want us to forget how to be polite. And I want us to kind of, again, use our own brains in order to think about, is this the best line to send, or do I want to word it a little bit differently? So again, it outsources yet another segment of the frontal lobes. So thank you for that. How about the voice-activated devices with emotional intelligence?
We decided a nay for this. One, we're already concerned with how much computers seem to know and pick up on us.
Right. Yeah.
Other thing we're afraid of is if you have a device that can kind of cheer you up, we're kind of afraid that we'll lose the ability to form that human to human connection and just be like entirely dependent on these devices. So it was a no from us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. This is amazing. If only we could all be on the board of directors for all of these different things. I think that would be, for me, the ideal solution. But I agree with you, Faith, and with the decision of your group. For me, the main concern here is that one of the implementations of this technology will probably be within the mental health field. And so some of the ideas are that we're going to be using some of these voice-activated devices in order to help people feel better, or one of the patents that Amazon has applied for is this very thing. So for Alexa to be able to detect everything from a slight kind of raspiness in your voice, because that means you may be getting a cold. And of course, because Amazon can order you anything you want, there would be an automatic order going out for cough syrup in that case. So it's everything from that going up to you sound kind of depressed, and then Alexa gives you options for these are the different ways in which we can fix your depression. So for me personally, that's one of the concerns. Okay, and I think that's all from me, Marie. If there's some questions, again, I can't see the chat right now, but I know you want to share your screen now. Can you just do that on your end, or should I stop on mine?
I can. Before we do that, though, I don't think we have any new questions in the chat right now, but does anyone have questions? If you want to just unmute yourself, if you have a question about anything we've covered today. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yep. Nothing new?
That's just fine. Everyone's processing.
Yeah.
So I will share my screen quickly, just with a little plug for next month. I want to thank everyone for joining, and especially thank our amazing presenter and our student leaders for facilitating. I think we've got a lot to think about after this. And this was recorded. So if you missed the beginning, or if you can think of someone who you might be really interested to take a listen, we'll be sharing the link so that you can watch this webinar again and again forever if you want, although we wouldn't recommend doing that too many times in a row. And you can share it freely with, I know some of you are teachers or coordinators or student organizers, so please feel free to share this with your students. For the students among us, please feel free to share with friends, family. I know this is a topic that does not care about the bounds of age. And for next month, our topic is App Purge August. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how to tidy up your devices, do a little summer spring cleaning, if you will. And that will be on Thursday, August 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So please tune in for that. I will be sending out some messaging for that month like I did for this month, and we hope to see you there. I'll hang out on here for a few minutes in case anybody wants to hang back and ask questions. But thank you all so much for coming, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. I shared my email with you in the chat, so in case you have any questions that come to you a little bit later on, please feel free to let me know. I know I shared, again, like Marie said, a lot of information with you. There's a lot of stuff in there, but if you have any other questions, or if you want any additional resources and things like that, if you have any other questions about those 4 types of tech that I was talking about, you can just feel free to reach out and ask me any questions. And if you have any right now too, I'm happy to answer those as well, or even comments. It doesn't. There's always this pressure of like a question, like how do I come up with a question? I want it to sound smart and insightful. How do I do that? But even a comment is fine.
Cool. So we'll hang out if anyone has comments and stuff. Oh, Carol, go.
Carol, go ahead.
I have bad timing. I was just gonna say I really enjoyed your content and everything else that we learned.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, I like speaking to students, because I more often than not tend to speak to well, let's call them adults, but yeah, adults, the older population, and it is a very different conversation, I think, because the perceptions are different, the experiences are different. Again, you guys are growing up in an age that's very different to the one that we grew up in. So the perspectives are very, very different. So for me, it's always interesting to hear your views and to see this world through your eyes as well, in terms of how you perceive, especially when it comes to the future of tech. It's something I'm very interested in, because we have the ability now to look to the future and say, okay, so far this is how things have been going. Let's talk about what we're happy with, what we're not happy with, and then plug that into whatever we're going to be doing in the future, and not move fast and break things this time around. Hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other comments or thoughts? All right. Well, the clock has struck 4. So thank you so much, everyone.